All right, it's 3:01. Want to welcome everyone to the Finance Committee meeting and I'm going to start by calling the roll. Deborah Doyle. Here. Barbara McKenzie. Dave Cahill. Here. All right, just a reminder to everyone for recording, please be sure to press the button on your microphone. We have no announcements, and I understand from Lisa, we have no public appearances and no comments that have been received. So we do have a couple of meaty topics, however, and I'm going to suggest we move ahead right away into item 4.1, which is the financial reporting for the first 6 months of the year. And I'll turn things over to our esteemed CFO, Myrna Lopez.
Good afternoon. So we've reached our 6-month mark as of December 31st, 2023. And I think overall it's a good financial picture. But nevertheless, we always need to stay on top of our expenditures, our revenues, and track them meticulously. But given that we're at 50% of the fiscal year and it's the second quarter, there are some additional reports that you don't normally get on a monthly basis. So having said that, the mid-year report, which includes a deeper analysis of the revenues and also expenditures, will be provided to the Finance Committee come February. We are looking at and some budget adjustments. They'll be minor, but will help continue our planning accordingly for the end of the fiscal year. So it does need a few more days to finalize so that we can have it to you in February. But here is the December report, and our revenues are now up to $20.8 million, which is 48% of our total budgeted revenues. And as of December, the property tax receipts are $14.8 million, which is 57% of our annual target. So as you know, the first property bill that comes in are received in December. So we've been waiting for this time, and it looks really positive for us. And
Okay to ask questions?
Yes.
I was really happy to see that the property tax receipts are at 57%. Are they typically above half because some people will prepay the entire year or some other reason?
Yes, they normally do come in higher than 50%. And I'm still going in communications with the county, because in November they give us a certified revenue expectations for property tax. And so I'm in communication with them to see if we will need to make any budget adjustments for our mid-year review.
Okay. But in any case, we are $1 million ahead of where we were last year with property tax. So
yes,
that's right. Thank you.
Sales tax receipts for the month of December was $1,197,222. And these represent October sales tax because of the 2-month lag. And that makes 4 months of revenue, which is 33% of our collections. And we're at 30 total, 5.2 million, which is 31.7%. It's slightly under, but the higher months are also that come in are April sales tax receipts, and then and then the summer months of May and not, well, May and June. So there's still time to make up this tiny gap. But at this point, I feel good that we will meet our target. Other revenue receipts are $777,000. That represents the combination of revenues such as the interest earned and grants and other donations, and charges for damaged books. Under expenditures,
I'm gonna stop you after each section. Just any questions or comments from the committee members about the revenue figures? Barbara?
Oh, this little tiny point, but are we starting to use the word target instead of budgeted amounts? Or have we been using targets for a long?
well, our budget is a planning tool, and so I'm just interchanging words. Our expectation for example, sales tax is 16.5 million, so that's our target at this point. That's why I use the word target.
It just seemed like a new word. I did just different terminology than we've been using, but I don't know. I know what you meant.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
And I had a question also. I understand that sales tax, it's not a straight line function, that there are some months where we collect more. I was surprised at the months that you mentioned. Would you reiterate which months typically? I mean, I just naively thought, oh, it's, holiday season, people are gonna be spending money for Christmas. And so, November, December should be a little bit higher, but I have no
Yeah.
basis for that assumption. I'm just curious.
Normally our highest months are our receipt is September, which is July. And so September, October, and November are our higher months. And just remember, they're 2 months behind, so that would be July, September are our higher months. And then come April is really February, or let's say May, that is really March. Typically, we have to understand our economy, and like you said, one indicator is could be the holidays. But since I've been here, I've noticed that even the holidays are not as high as these other months. Sonoma County really brings in, it is a worldwide destination,
Right.
and we enjoy that. In addition to that, there are other industries that procure lots of goods that, they pay sales tax around that agriculture and the wine industry. So those are really more of the drivers in this area. Plus, we also have, I think, a healthy auto industry. So those are the big ticket items.
Interesting. Okay, well, I understand that you're still cautiously optimistic. I looked at this and I see we're running a little bit behind where we were last year.
Mhm.
But our budget is actually, for the year, is actually $1 million more than what we did last year. So I'm assuming that when you do the mid-year review, this is something you'll take a close look at.
Yes, I mean, if we compare to last year, it makes a lot of sense that the revenue, the rate of growth year over year is slowing down. But given what we're expecting this year of 16.5 million, we're at almost 32% of that. So, and we're at 33% of the year. So we're really close. I will give you a better and deeper analysis and discussion of where our revenues are with our expenditures. So in the mid-year review, and I look forward to that. But
Okay.
I think this is healthy. But we're also expecting January, and we'll see where January brings us. It's normally not a high month. But in terms of our revenues against our target and against our expenditures, we're doing okay.
Okay, well, I think, I'm glad to see that our property tax is strong, and hopefully if we're a little weaker on the sales tax, we'll be able to make it up there. No other questions on revenues? Okay, thanks. Please, continue, and as you complete each section, please pause and give us a chance to ask questions, okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
On actuals, total expenditures are 21,132,486, which is 45% of our total budgeted expenditures. Of that, salaries and benefits are $12.8 million, or approximately 45% of the total budgeted expenditures. Again, this includes our lump sum for our accrued, unfunded accrued liability of over $1 million. So this will smooth out a little. But on the other hand, as of January 1, we've have a cost of living adjustment that went into effect. And so we'll see our payroll increasing, and benefits increase accordingly. And so we also will have an increase in our health costs as well. Yes, our healthcare premiums went up, so. Under services and supplies, actual expenditures are at 6.5 million, which is 47.2% of our total budgeted expenditures. Books, as you can see, are at 54%. And we have been adjusting the purchases for books on a quarterly basis against our any friends funds. We're looking to do that now monthly so that this is more up to date. And but we will continue to review this budget. But I wanted to make that note for the committee. Also, the following reports were included in this report, which was the detailed account by account for property tax and sales tax, and also a summary of other contracts, services by vendor, and your friends' balances. But again, these friends' balances will be adjusted by the books, and we do that adjustment in January, so you'll see that in January. Also, capital expenditures are at 1.6 million, or approximately 39.7% of the capital budget.
Back to the friends just for a moment. Are books the only thing that's gonna be credited in January? What about the other?
We do
Purchases.
The friends are reconciled on a monthly basis. So that's done monthly. And so what you have here today is through December minus the quarterly book reconciliation adjustment. So every month we do reconcile, but the committee only gets it on a quarterly basis.
Okay, so at the end of the year, these balances are still pretty high. And are we to assume that there are plans afoot for projects or other things?
Well, they don't spend all of their money every year, so some of the balances carry over from year to year.
Right, if this is that other problem that we had.
I
which
think
one?
I don't know the status of each branch, but I know that each branch is working with their friends groups on planning special projects that would be paid with these funds, but I don't have the detail on that. We could. we can ask for, at the next quarterly, which would be, you would see that, March, and the March report comes in, to this committee in April. And we can have a little more narrative for you if you'd like.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Deborah?
Yeah, I have a question also about media subscriptions. I can remember some people in libraries management complaining to me that that suddenly at the end of the fiscal year, everybody was trying to buy more books and subscriptions and media and that sort of thing. And I know that in previous year, we've had maybe that conversation once or twice. And so are there methods that you have developed to kind of fix that? Maybe that's a more generic
I
question.
don't think
but-
they do that here. At Sonoma County, I think they budget, you know, I think we have the other issue where we buy books, but we don't get the bills until the next fiscal year, so that's why we rebudget. We don't have extra money left over in the collection services budget that I think you're thinking about like if books don't ship, if we don't get books that we purchased, there are typically, you know, things that, that we, you know, that we don't get because the publisher doesn't publish it or some other issue. But that's really not an issue here.
Okay, but truly I can remember departmental managers who were frantically looking for books to buy because they didn't want to have to give back not here, but they didn't want to have to give back the money that was in their department. So
Some agencies, some jurisdictions have a policy, if you spend your budget or you lose it.
correct.
And so that's the incentive of hurry up and spend.
Mhm.
We do not have that policy here of, you know, spend it or lose it.
That's
And
the answer.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you back up a little bit and talk through what we're looking at here in terms of the total available balances for the Friends Group? Because I'm seeing in the note, it says expenditures for books, media subscriptions total 2.2
Mhm.
million or 54% of the budget. Expenditures are reconciled and allocated quarterly across Friends funds. These funds are not just for the purchase of books, are they?
The Friends, no, this is a combination for programs. Yeah, programs and books. Mhm. So what ends up happening is that the Friends will donate, for example, the month of December, they may, well, let's go back a couple months. The month of November. This is just an example, but they will donate $1,000 and they say, $500 are for programs. Story time or whatever it is. And $500 are we want you to buy books, these children's books or any kind of book. So then we notify our collections team that the Friends, this particular branch donated $500 for the books. They note it in their budget that there's $500 for this specific branch that they need to buy children's books for. So they do their normal purchasing and then we get a report on the finance side and we say, we saw that the collections purchased $500 worth of books. So, but all the purchases really happen on the property tax and sales tax side. And so when we get that quarterly report, we then shift those charges over to the Friends Group. So the donation and the revenue is in the Friends Group. But when we first buy the books, we buy them with our other funds and then charge back the Friends.
So when we charge it back, that additional $500, say, that does not get included in the library's financial statement ultimately of what was spent on books, or does it?
No, it doesn't. So,
It's like-
right,
it's like
that's
an
why it's a little
off-book
higher.
Transaction.
Right, so as you can see, that's right now, collections, that figure is, hasn't been charged back. Some of it hasn't been charged back to the friends.
But what it also sounds like is each one of the friends groups on whatever schedule they want requests whatever they want to spend the money on in whatever amount they want, and your team
Yes.
has to go back and
Right.
adjust afterwards.
This is one of the understandings that we have and made corrections on, is that the friends group submit a letter delineating the agreement of how those donations will be used. So we can always go back, and this is part of reconciling. If anyone has any questions, this is where it is, and if we, transpose the number or something in our figures, we can trace everything back.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
Well, I have to follow up with another comment then. Lest we forget, a lot of these big balances are things that the friends donated, the money donated for specific items that the branch managers asked for.
Mhm.
The friend said, fine, we'll pay for that. The money came to the library, and then when those things were bought, they weren't charged to the friends. So it's obviously way more than books, and I believe you're kind of implying that the friends say, they make the request like, we want this spent on books, but it really comes from the branch managers, and they're very specific requests for, it wouldn't be $500 for programs, it'd be $157 for this person or whatever. So they're very specific. And the question I was asking about these big balances, again, that was all money donated. I'll just talk about Roanoke Park, by the Roanoke Park Friends for very specific things. And that most of them were purchased, but they weren't charged to the friends. And so the plan was a few months ago that some big projects would come out of each of the branches, and we would use, this money would be charged to those projects to try to clear the books off. So
Right, so there is the new procedure and understanding with each of the friends groups is the process that I described. We need a letter with every donation to delineate exactly what those donations are for. That started on July 1, 2023. Prior to that, you're correct that there was no systematic way that these donations came in and recorded or used. And so we came to a mutual agreement that we agreed on what those balances were as of June 30th, 2023. And that each branch manager would work with their friends group to determine how to utilize those funds. And I don't have any specifics at this time for that.
Does that clarify that for you, Barbara?
yeah, something's gonna have to happen in a big way to bring these balances down, and we haven't seen it yet in our branch, so.
Well, it's the friends, I'm gonna just,
What?
We'll be talking about the CIP plan shortly, so.
Okay.
yeah. But this, just to read, this is the available balance that each of the friends groups has. So the fact that in the past, they may have requested us to spend money and we did, and we didn't charge them back. That's all in the past. And as of July 1, we now have this new procedure in place. When they ask us to spend money, we will, and it will be charged to them.
I don't think that's the.
I'm sorry?
Well, the understanding is that this money actually was spent. These items actually were purchased, but the friends' accounts weren't charged for them. So my understanding is that the branch managers are gonna come back to the friends and say, let's get a canopy out here for your back porch and, some other stuff, and then it'll be moved off the books. But these aren't really available balances for the friends to use.
No, I think they are.
Well,
Yeah, the friends.
In consultation with the division managers and the branch managers, it's not like the friends can say, we're not gonna approve everything that there has to be some discussion. We have to think that it's an appropriate use of the
Right,
funds.
but let's just agree that the Friends groups have been the beneficiaries of our previous poor accounting. So they got to, in effect, eat their cake and have it also. But going forward, that won't be the case. Dave?
I think we should stop talking about a fairly small item
Yes,
and move to the capital improvements program, or else we're gonna be out of time.
I
I mean,
appreciate
really
that.
out of time.
Okay. Mary, do you want to finish up on the December statements?
Yes, so under our cash balances, we have under our general fund, which is property tax, $21.3 million, and under sales tax, $20 million. And any questions on that? Under the fund balance, our fund balance, which is the uncommitted fund balance and available for budgeting as of December 31st, 2023, is under property tax, 11.2 million, and under sales tax, 7.7 million. I do want to just remind you that the commission approved assigning or committing $1.3 million of these available funds, committing them to the matching grant requirement under the Building Forward Together capital program for several branches. And these funds, support various branch libraries. And this action will essentially reduce this available fund balance that you have here. And by this amount of 1.3 million, and you'll see that in the January report. That concludes my financial reports.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I know, Dave, I appreciate your urging us forward, but are there any questions on either of these items, cash balance or the fund balance, before we turn to the next agenda item?
Are we going through the reports?
And not unless you have a specific question. Did you have a question?
I thought we were gonna go through the report. Let me just look really fast here, but,
While she's looking, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that the state budget came out and it may have an impact on library funding. And so we're not sure how it's happening yet, but some funds that were promised by the state may not in fact reach their donor, reach their recipient, their
Yeah.
intended recipient, so.
We don't know
More
how
will
it's
be
gonna
revealed.
affect us yet.
Yeah.
So we know that the state's $38 billion short and they want the state library to give back $131 million from the grants. So, yes.
Normally, this library does not receive any direct funding from the state library or from the state. Our revenues come from the sales tax and from property tax. However, what we have received are grants, and we have been notified through several channels that many of the grants that we're looking at, we may not see them again, or there will be significantly reduced in fiscal year 25. And as Director Thibault just said, that even our capital grants that we've gotten rewards on may suffer. So we'll see additional
Are you
information.
referring to the Building Forward Together grants that we may not actually see those?
And just as a piece of additional information, both Director Thibault and I are on the California Library Association Advocacy and Legislative Committee. And so we hear from the CLA lobbyist about what's going on in Sacramento. So we heard this on Friday morning.
But we're meeting with Senator McGuire next week.
All right. Question.
Yeah, I did find a question on the voucher payments over $50,000. It's not numbered, so can't give you a page. There's a bill or a new thing for the video surveillance and access control. Is that the purchase of the items? That's not like going to be a monthly charge, right?
That's correct. It's the
That's
actual,
the
the
purchase.
cameras and installation, the labor costs for installation.
Okay, and
Barbara, you're referring to something that was in the November reports, right?
well, it came in my packet. It says,
Yeah, but it's for the month of November.
Oh, yeah.
That month. Okay,
Mhm. Yes.
anything else?
well, never mind.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item 4.2, and I just wanted to preface this, with, some acknowledgement and thanks to this committee. This is not, I would say, a finalized item. But I've talked with Erica and Mirna and asked them to bring it to us, even though it's not been finalized, so that we can have a good look at it, offer our suggestions, and help pave the way for what will ultimately be presented to the full commission. So I appreciate your willingness to look at something that's still in something of a draft form. It has been reviewed, but it has not been finalized. So Erica, I think I'll turn it over to you to introduce this item, if you would, please.
Sure. So, as Commissioner Elkin said, this is really a draft form. And we know that there are some things that probably are not here that you are looking for. But the two things that we really wanted to make sure that you understood was the criteria that we used to come up with the priority of the projects and the worksheets. So what we would like to accomplish with this meeting is to, review these worksheets that we put together, and these are templates. Ideally, we would like to get the feedback so that we can create one of these for each location, and that we feel comfortable that they, tell us all the things that we need them to tell us, that there are no outstanding questions, and that, the plans will be, that when you look at the CIP, once it's complete, that you will understand exactly what we're proposing. So we created this chart, we call it a modernization score, and we used three criteria for coming up with a score. The first one is, and this is all based upon information in our facilities master plan, our facility condition assessments, and our ADA transition plan. Ideally, when we put this on the website, we will have links in there to those reports so that you will be able to see this is how we got to this cost, the ADA upgrades. They'll have a link in there that will take you to that portion of the ADA transition plan so that you will be able to tell where those numbers came from. That's kind of the goal. We have Jill Ayers here from Group 4 who prepared the memo. And we've been working with her to develop this plan. The other thing I want to note that, the obvious thing is when you look at the master plan capital needs, for example, I'm looking at agency annex, we have a total of $3.1 million. But then when you look at the capital project, you'll see that it's only $1 million. And, why is there this discrepancy? And it mostly has to do with, these are all the things that this building needs. But we are selecting the highest priority things to be addressed. And that's why you'll see the difference in these numbers. So I'm going to turn it over to Jill so that she can go through her memo and answer any questions.
Jill, I really appreciate you being here, and thanks for the great work you and your team did in putting together the memo. I think it would be helpful if you could walk us through, and kind of a question that came up to me. Obviously, this is not the first time you've done this, and so I assume that the approach that you took in prioritizing the needs is one that you've used with other systems as well. Is that true?
I would say the approach to working with a library and how to talk about the different criteria and how to prioritize is one that we've used many times, but the way of weighting the projects, how each criterion was weighted, the information that went into it, that's very much from your Sonoma County Library team. So,
Please, go ahead.
sure. I was asked to help create a framework and a tool for the library to use to solve a couple of different problems. One is, how do you understand how much work is needed in each one of these facilities? It came out of the master plan. You've got the facility condition assessment, things like roofs and carpets and all the kinds of things that you need to, your team is very good at staying on top of to keep your buildings fresh and comfortable and wonderful. There is the work that came out of the ADA transition plan, which had a 10-year horizon for taking care of all of the gaps that were in each of those reports. And then there is the service, the things that Erica and her team will want to make sure are updated over time as services change, as community needs change, those kinds of things. Those are three things that we wanted to make sure we got our arms around, is that whole number that Erica just mentioned. This is the cost for this building in total. And then needing a tool that helped talk about what went into a specific project that's proposed, what's going to be proposed in a project for the next year, next 2 years, however that's defined, so that it is something the commission can understand. How much is it going to cost? How are those costs going to lay out over what time frame? And then how do you talk with your partners about how much the library's responsibility is and how much the partner's responsibility is? So this is not the easiest one of these I've ever done. It's got this added layer of complexity to it that's actually been quite fun. So working through that, and that's what those two pieces are. We started with some models that some of your partners use in their own city capital improvement programs, feeling like, if that's a tool that they find useful, we'll use that. Something similar to that to communicate with City of Hillsburg, City of Santa Rosa about these projects. And then it became more complex than that. So lots in there. Let's see. I think the first part of the memo talks about the different information sources, where those came from, how as appropriate each cost is escalated to current dollars, and how that can continue to be escalated moving forward. I think we've seen, according to the state, 5% escalation just over the last 12 months. And we have no reason to believe that won't continue, and want to make sure we're planning in that way. And how to, your facilities team is very good about taking care of stuff ahead of it. So even some of the things that are in the reports that will be linked in here, they've already taken care of. Dave, Clint, the team have already addressed some of these. So making sure that that stays up to date. Okay. The memo talks about the different kinds of ways that work can be done. The library's facility team takes care of a lot of the work yourself through your own steam, even when it's the partner's responsibility. The library's team can take care of that. And then there's a more traditional design bid build process, like you're seeing with Petaluma. You have an architectural engineering team come in, do the design, sort of a whole building approach, go out to bid with that, and then a contractor builds it. So one of the reasons that's important to take note of is that there's different costs associated with each of those different kinds of projects. Something that your facilities team does may not have as many soft costs, design fees, owner contingencies, et cetera, as you would want to have available to you for a Petaluma project or something similar. That's where that information goes. Master plan capital needs, I think I covered that already. where the three different pieces, ADA maintenance and service modernization, method for escalation, and then the proposed capital project. And this, from the original version you saw, I just really kind of put this out there as these are the different pieces of this document and what each of these is supposed to mean. So we've got the proposed project scope, which may be very simple. It may be a whole building. It may be something in between. The budget target for that proposed scope. And the idea here is that that is not the number that the library will be responsible for, but the whole, getting an understanding of the whole project. You, your partner, wherever the money's coming from, what it's going to cost. There's the amount that the library has committed so far. Myrna put the number up earlier of the amount, and it was 1.2 million-ish. Myrna, I think that, you know, the library has agreed to put forward toward the grant funded projects so far. There's sources that the library may be bringing you for consideration.
Point of order, are we speaking on this sheet now or?
I'm still going through the memo,
Oh, okay.
but yes, it
We're on page 28 of the memo,
has to do with the,
where we get the funding.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Yeah.
please continue it. I'm gonna stop you before you get to the two samples so that we can
yes,
take
okay.
a pulse from the.
Yeah. I know there's a lot here. There's committed funds, there's pending funds that you may choose to put toward the project. There's the amount that your partner is responsible for and hopefully has agreed to contribute toward the project for their portion of the work. There is potentially the gap between the money that's available and the project budget that is needed to complete the project. And then there's a part that helps you forecast it year by year. You know, $5 million project doesn't mean you're going to spend it all in the next 12 months. So that brings us to the modernization score. So we went through a variety of different ways of looking at this. We had a few different data points, different ways of thinking about the needs for the maintenance for the ADA. And we came down to something that felt really simple, which was a simple score of 1 to 4 based on when the last time a library got something that feels like a major remodel. Like when did it last get some meaningful attention? And then there was the facility condition index score. This is a number that's taken straight from the Bureau Veritas facility condition assessment reports. It is in the simplest possible terms that I know how to put it into. It is the total cost of maintenance that's anticipated over a time period divided into the assumed replacement cost of the building. So if you have an FCI of 20%, conceptually, you're replacing 20% of your building over the next 10, 20 years. That's what that number comes from. And so that got a score of 1 to 4 based on where each building was. And your buildings are all in pretty good shape. So none of them rose to the 4 level there because your team takes pretty good care of them. And then the maintenance timing score. This is within that amount of money that adds up to the amount that's due over the next 10 years. When is that due? When is most of it due? If you've got $1 million worth of maintenance coming over the next 10 years, is most of that due in the next year? Or is it most of it due toward the end of, you know, later 8, 9, 10 years down the road? And so putting a score to that just to help make sure that projects are prioritized before things fail. You don't want to wait on a roof that needs to be replaced next year if you don't have to. So
It's more like an urgency score, that, you know, and that's how I thought about the maintenance timing score, that there are some, you know, the higher it is, the more urgent it is that we fix it. So 98% is a very high number, whereas 20% is, you know, in the range quite low.
I'm gonna stop you there
Absolutely.
if I could, because I wanna. You've given us a lot of information here. I'm gonna take it in chunks. And the first thing that I wanted do is just talk through with the committee this, this prioritization process, what you refer to as the modernization score. It's on page 30 in the packet, Lisa. There's the chart that I think sums it up. And I'm gonna play back what I heard and then see what the committee thinks. That you looked at three different factors, all of which could be quantified. And the first was when was the last major remodel? Was it within the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the last 30 years, or more than 30 years? And based on that, you assigned a number from 1 to 4. So if it hadn't been in a long time, it's going to get a higher number. If it had a major remodel more recently, it's going to get a lower number. That seemed to make sense to me. You also had what you call the FCI score, the Facility Condition Index. And this is, from my understanding, it's what percentage of the building needs to be worked on. The estimated value of the work compared to what it would cost to replace the entire building. So if we're looking at a project that, I just threw out some numbers, that would cost $10 million, but it would cost 50 million to replace the whole building, then we're looking at about 20% of the building that needs to be redone. And again, you've got some figures here. If it's 15% or less, it gets a score of 1. If it's 15 to 20%, it gets a score of 2. If it's 20 to 25%, bigger chunk of the building needs to be redone, that's a score of 3. Over 25% would be a score of 4, but we don't have any of those. So, okay. And that again is a 1 to 4 point scale. Then you had one factor, which was a 10-point scale. So obviously this is weighted more heavily in terms of the overall prioritization. And this is what you refer to as a maintenance timing score. But Erica, I like your substitute word here, urgency. And it's of this work that needs to be done within the next 10 years, what percentage of it actually has to be done within the next 4 years? Is that a good way of thinking of it?
Yeah, by 2027, so.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, well, yeah, so 4 years from when the report was done, yeah. And the higher the percentage of the work that needs to be done by 2027, the higher the maintenance timing score. And this goes from 1 to 10. So I'm just going to stop there. Do you have any questions about the 3 factors that have been used to prioritize the modernization score? Deborah?
I don't believe when we saw the facilities master plan that there had been any look at earthquake issues. Do you think, and I assume that you have not factored that in this information either. Do you think that might have, I mean, how much does an earthquake preparedness? I mean, I'm looking at these buildings that are old and certainly putting on my Windsor hat, there's some concern in the city about, are any of those buildings safe? So at some point, we should probably think about that. I don't know that it has to be right now, but
That
just
was-
verifying that that's not part of this.
That's
Okay.
not part of the
Okay,
master
thank
plan.
you.
And in fact, the for Central Santa Rosa Library, the FCA consultant very specifically said, I see cracking in the basement there that suggests that there's a structural problem. Maybe I shouldn't. But he said he can't put a number to suggested further study. So.
And also, so to do an assessment, that is an additional expense, right? I mean, I think Windsor, they were talking about $80,000 just to do the assessment. So it's not something that would that normally be part of a facilities master plan, or is that kind of a separate?
Not unless, I wouldn't say it's normal, it's not unheard of. So if that was something that we needed to add in a budget for at some or all facilities, we're happy to, help put that in.
Okay.
Obviously complicated by the fact that the history and genealogy library is the only one that we actually own. Yeah. Other questions on these three factors, Dave?
Well, let me just say, I'm extremely impressed with the methodology. I can't figure any holes in it to see. And I think it's especially important because of the measure why legal can. The Santa Rosa, our Citizens Oversight Committee has not been thrilled over at least the past 2 years about the large amount of cash we have in bank. And they keep saying, do something. So now, whenever they or the members of the public say, why this balance? This is what we're gonna use it for, and a very rough schedule of the details. So I think for external public relations, this is really an important tool. And I'm not prepared to engage in any extensive critique of how come one scale tops out at 10 and the other two tops out at 4. Anyway, so I'm very pleased. Get an A for that.
Thank you. Barbara, question or comment on this portion of it? You're okay?
Not on this part. no.
Okay. So then I just have to comment. I mean, you have another section that you refer to as moderating factors, which I mean, in my very simplistic way of thinking about this, the left side of it, the modernization score, seems to be the demand, and the right side, which is the availability of money, seems to be the supply. Obviously, given the fact that when we added all these numbers up, when we were looking at the facilities master plan, it was an enormous, I don't remember, it was 250 million.
200 million, yeah.
Yeah, so it's one thing to prioritize the urgency or need of the work. Given the economic climate, it's going to be an entirely other matter to look at where's the money going to come from. Okay, I stopped you. So what you were describing, I think, was the information that went into these one pages, right? So let's maybe turn to these. There will be one for each facility. We're just looking at 2 here as a sample so that we can see, is this the right amount of information presented in a way that's relatively easy for the commission to grasp, or what upgrades do we have? So I'm going to try to talk my way through this, and Jill, you can correct me as I stumble. The top part is the total amount of work that we're looking at needing between now and 2032. Is that right?
That's the intent, less, things that may not have been considered, but
Like earthquake.
if, a structural study is not in there. If you wanted to put solar panels on the roof or something like that, that may not be in here, but the numbers that we got out of the master plan and things we considered as part of that process, yes, that's the intent.
Okay, and so I'm just going to look at the first column, the total needs, and this is it's expressed in dollars valued today. Right? And so if the work were to be done 2 or 3 years from now, we understand that there's gonna be an inflationary factor. So we're looking at in 2024 dollars, what is involved. So I'm just gonna look at the H&G annex here for a sec. That's the one you have up here, Lisa. The first column is telling me that based on the ADA analysis, we have $228,000 worth of work that needs to be done. Maintenance needs between now and 2032 are 800,000. Service modernization allowance between now and 2032 is 1.6 million. And the soft costs are added for all of the design and engineering fees, and also for work that we would be doing in figuring out the project design. So it looks like if you anticipated this being done through a design build process, you multiply the other three numbers by 30%. If you anticipated that we would be doing most of the work, you multiplied it by 20%. Is that right?
Yeah,
So was it just one of those two, either 30 or 20?
those were the two, and that was based on conversation with your team. Your facilities group thinks that they would either self-perform most of the work at the annex or procure it themselves, but not going out to bid through a general contractor.
Okay, and so with the annex, it shows as 20%. And that tells me, this is work that our team is planning to undertake.
Yes, and down in the notes section below, it says assume work by SCL, so that's also in there, where we had an assumption about that. See
Okay,
down,
where-
down here below,
The very bottom and
down in the
small.
Oh, I
little
see.
tiny notes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, it's a little small. But that assume work by SCL, that's linked to that 20%.
okay. And then the next two columns are showing what share of this money is going to be provided by the library and what share is going to be provided by our JPA partner, or we hope is going to be provided by the JPA partner. So let's, for the annex, since we own that, we're looking at 100%, but let's look at you did provide us with another example, which is the Healdsburg example. And here it looks as though the libraries, this of the almost $6 million that's going to be needed, the library's going to have to come up with about 4.5 million. Our partner is going to come up with about 1.5. Is that, now, is this based on discussion, commitment, hope? Where did the partner share come from?
Well, it's based on the facility condition assessment and the ADA transition plan. So we know that we are responsible for interior ADA and our partners are responsible for the exterior. And the maintenance needs, we also know who's responsible for what. So, I think these numbers, if I'm not mistaken, came from Bureau Veritas, right? The projections of the.
The AD and the maintenance needs came from Bureau Veritas, and out of thousands of items, generally speaking, it's what's on the outside of the building, what's in the envelope of the building, and then what's on the inside is how that generally got split.
Okay, so those ADA upgrades that are on the exterior of the building, which in this case is 90% of them, City of Healdsburg is responsible for. Not to put too fine a point on it, but this doesn't necessarily say that the City of Healdsburg has told us they're gonna actually pay for this, does it?
That's correct. We
Okay.
do know that they are willing to add some money in, but we don't have a number from them yet.
Okay.
We're working.
But I guess what I'm not trying to I'm trying to understand how the format is gonna work, not necessarily the specifics about Healdsburg. So, is this, is this a pretty good indication of what the kind of breakdown we're gonna see page by page, that most of the work is on the interior? Or not necessarily?
It's gonna be facility by facility.
Varies
Some of-
widely.
Some of these will look different in terms of the proportion interior and exterior.
Okay.
It's about the findings of each.
But we could say that what's at the top is the total amount that we think it will cost, and what's in the bottom is actually secured or committed.
Yes.
So if there's no money in the partner contribution on the second table, that's because we don't have them committing to the. funds.
Right. So where it says, and Dave, I'll get to you in just a second, but this division, partner share, library share, is based on the idea that the partners are responsible for the shell of the building. The library is responsible for what's inside, and that's how the split was made. Okay. Dave?
Yes, I have a question on both of these samples. The service modernization allowance is the dominant amount. Really dominant in the case of Healdsburg, less so in H and G, but still it's almost 50%. Is this typical? Because from what the definition is, the service modernization allowance is what would be needed to modernize the operations of the buildings, basically based on a San Francisco consultants comparable libraries. So it would be fair to say that the service modernization allowance says, well, this would be, these are nice things, be nice to do these. But what really matters is the ADA and the maintenance needs. Is that fair to say, or is it not fair to say?
Give us an example of some of the things, some of the types of expenses that would go under that heading.
Yeah. If you were to, as you're going through H and G or Healdsburg design, if you were to say you wanted to add some group study rooms, that's not going to fall under maintenance and it's not going to fall under ADA, but it's a big part of what that community may be wanting and needing. So that would fall under service modernization. If your library staff were laboring in a room that was a third of the size that they really need to provide great modern service to the community consistent with your reimagining plan and changing needs over time, that would be a service modernization kind of a project. I will completely confess that service modernization allowance of these is the biggest wild card. It's like, it's really hard to put a number to it because some of these have not remotely been designed yet. So when I worked with our cost consultant, I said, assume that the building's in great shape, assuming the building has no accessibility needs. If you were going to do a renovation, remodel of this building to add some group study rooms, do a little of this and that, what number would you put on that per square foot? And he gave me a range. And so that's what this is. But as you go along, as you get to Healdsburg in your prioritization, you have the opportunity to initiate some design services, talk to your facilities team about what they think those things at that moment might really cost. So that's the one that I would say is the most flexible.
Also, a practical question. What's the schedule for releasing the other individual branch sheets? We've got two. There are what?
Oh, so I think what we wanted was we wanted to make these, super clear so that anyone could understand them. And then once we got that feedback, we would go and standardize all of them so that each sheet has all the relevant information.
That's only part of what I was asking. We're faced with the political problem here. Come November, we have to convince people this project, our money is worth renewing. And therefore it'd be great to have fairly soon sheets for everybody. So we can say, yes, here's your sheet. And here's what we think is needed. I'm not saying it has to be in for a month from now, but 6 months from now may be too late. Because people will start asking questions.
We have the figures for all of these. what we're looking to provide to the team today is just our input on the formatting.
Yes,
Once we do that, they've already got all the numbers and can turn this around fairly quickly.
Yes, what we noticed is we do have a sheet for every facility, but what we noticed is that that it was best to get some feedback from the finance committee in terms of the template, and then we would standardize it, standardize this template
Mhm.
across the board. But we, like Andy said, we do have information. We're still scrubbing the numbers. We're still reviewing them and making sure that they make sense to us internally, that they're consistent, the way we're, presenting them here. But before we go any further, we wanted to make sure that this template makes sense to you all as the policymakers, that you can then, we can provide to you and then present to the commission at some point. Right now, we do have next steps. So there is still some work to be done. The next steps are, again, to refine this project sheet template. And then also, as you can see in the lower part where it's, in terms of the project budget, we would like to provide, we've received some feedback that some itemization of what the project would be. So for example, with HNG, we have a $1 million budget. What is that all, what kind of work does that entail? Some detail, some level of detail there. And then continue to, each of the facilities, we need to develop those sheets. And then we still also need to work on procedures. Like, what is the, standardize a process for internally so that the management team can review projects and make recommendations then to the commission. We need those procedures in place. Also, as the chief financial officer and in developing the budget, and one of the major items here is that all of our capital projects are funded with available fund balance. And we need to continue to further develop our procedures for replenishing those funds for the capital. Right now, as you just saw in the previous item, we have available fund balance for budgeting. I would like to make a recommendation in the budget process to say annually, we will commit X% of the replenishment to our capital projects. But we first need to figure out what are those projects that we're talking about, and that's what the CIP does. And get some educated, informed procedure in place to replenish our funds. As you mentioned, Commissioner Cahill, you're right on it, is that our available fund balance without making any commitments looks like just a lot of available fund balance. But we have some very important investments that we need to make to meet the obligations of our current measure-wise sales tax expenditure plan, which a big part of it was facilities. Prior to the approval of the sales tax, the library had a non-existent capital program. I mean, we were fixing toilets, that's and it was emergency funds, where can we cobble up some money to, repair anything that needed to be done, essentially. That's what I gather from my review of how the capital expenditures were done. Here you have a best practice, which is a formal planning tool to create a budget for our facilities where we know that our community supports modernization of our facilities so that they're safe, healthy facilities that all of our community can thrive.
I will just add that Ray and I have been talking about having what we're calling a one pager for each of our approved projects that basically lists, these are the things that we're going to be doing. This is our projected budget. This is what we're contributing. This is what our partner is contributing. And this actually came as a result of that Press Democrat article. One of the things we struggled with is that, the information is not centralized. So trying to find, where the information is all stored and realizing that even our partners also, they need to know this information as well. So I contacted, Andrew in Healdsburg and said, look, this is what we're working on. When we have it all together, we will share it with all of you, just so that we're all on the same page and we all have the same information and we know what's going on. So that will be, and we've talked about, how if we will include that one pager in the CIP or if it will be, a related document, but that is what we're gonna be adding.
So I'm gonna jump in for just the top part here, where it currently says master plan capital needs. I think it would be clearer if we changed that heading to master plan capital needs through 2032. Because the year where it says maintenance needs, it's sort of buried down there, but really, we're talking about all the capital needs in those three categories between now and the year 2032, right? So if we do that, then we don't have to say maintenance needs 2023 to 2032. It's implied that the ADA upgrades, the maintenance needs, and the service modernization is what needs to be done between now and 2032. Is that okay? The bottom part, I think what I'm not clear on is what are we going to include there? Is it a specific portion of this work that we anticipate will be done by a certain year? Or is it a certain initial part that we're now planning? What is going to determine which chunk is outlined in the section at the bottom?
Well, I think in our current CIP, it actually is approved projects. So it doesn't, so for those branches that we don't have an approved project on, we don't actually have any information. It's for those things that we have committed funds for, like Healdsburg, Petaluma. We set aside the funds for Roanoke Park for the first year. So that's what we have.
Okay, so what this suggests to me, Dave, I'm going to come back to your question, is that if we have this top piece, the master plan capital needs for all of the facilities, it'll be pretty easy to look at the 12 or 14 pages and say, these are the capital needs we have between now and 2032.
Yeah.
Then as we begin to plan specific projects is when they would appear on the bottom of the page, right? So let's maybe take a look at the examples here and see how well they work. Is that okay with everybody? Barbara, did you have a question about the top part, or are you okay with the top?
I'll keep listening, but I do have a lot of questions.
Okay. So on the H&G, you're saying project scope is what was funded by California State Library grant and required matching funds. Refer to grant award documentation, and this would presumably be hyperlinked in the final, so it would actually take us to that. I'm concerned about creating.
No, we're actually gonna put the information in there.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay, better yet.
Yeah.
Because we don't have this lower section for all facilities. We only have it for those where we've actually got a project underway. Okay, so we can provide a little more detail than we have here. For the moment, I'm gonna try to forget that the CSL grant may not actually be available to us which is deeply concerning. So let's just see how this is, how you set this up. So project funding. You have the total. I'm just looking under funding sources, CSL Building Forward Grant, CSL Grant Match Library, unrestricted gift, additional library contribution, other gifts sources. So what this says to me is that this particular project, we're anticipating a total budget of $1,072,000.
Mhm.
And it looks like between the Building Forward grant and the grant match from the library, that's exactly what we have. What is the unrestricted gift in this case?
So this was a bequest that's specific to the History and Genealogy Library,
Okay, and
but we don't know if we're gonna use it for that, for this particular project, or if we're gonna use that money for something else. So that's why it's in the pending, because we haven't.
it's in the pending, and it also then gets zeroed out in the unfunded gap. Well, I guess no, that's showing that the gap in this case shows in addition, we have $10,000 additional that's available. Okay. And then, so that's the left hand here is, or left part is, where is the money coming from? And then the table to the right, Sonoma County Library expenditures by year forecast. We don't actually have anything forecast between now and 2027, but it says that the CSL grant and matching funds must be expended. So will those numbers be provided in the sample that actually comes to the commission?
Yeah, we do have an implementation timeline that spells out when we're gonna do this project, and we literally finished it like Friday afternoon.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah,
but the point would be to show for the specific project that's been planned, we see where the money's coming from. And in terms of the Sonoma County Library portion of that, here's how it's going to be expended. Is that right?
It's the
Okay.
intent, yes.
All right, that makes sense to me. Barbara, you can see your brain working over there. What concerns or upgrades do you have?
Well, a number of things. I'll just start since we're here on the H&G. So it needs $3 million worth of work. We're committing $1 million. And that's the budget target for now. So that, besides the detail of what we're getting, which of course we need, what are we not paying for? That's a list I'd like to see. If we must know what it is, since we know it costs $3 million. So,
What I hear, and this, I think is a reasonable point, is what are the things that are of the $3 million, what are the things that are included in this project? And what are the additional things that still have to be done, but are not included in this project? High level, is that the request?
yeah, that's what I mean. We know it needs $3 million worth of work. We're
Right.
only gonna do $1 million. So what are we not doing? So we can also, so we kind of look at that in proportion to the other buildings.
Well, it's only what are we not doing in this
Yeah,
specific
but it gives
project?
us more information about this specific building as we look forward to other
Right.
buildings. So
that
that,
might be helpful. If did, if we broke that down, what are we not doing? And maybe those other things are not urgent, maybe those are things that can be done in 8 years. I don't know,
well,
but we don't have that information right now.
Well, what would be, I think, ideal would be if we were gonna say, okay, here's the proposed project and what we're doing. Here are the other things and the year when we anticipate that this will be undertaken or planned or initiated in some way.
But I thought you wanted the capital needs that topic to be, or that title to be changed by 2032.
Well, so that's a good question. Here's my understanding is that what we have in the top of the page, these are all things that we would like to try to accomplish by 2032. Is that right? The top of each, we're talking about ADA upgrades that need to be done. We're talking about maintenance needs, and we're talking about service modernization. Is it conceivable that we will be able to do all of the things that for all of our facilities by 2032?
Well, I'm gonna go back to the partner share, and I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
So that's a general question that I had, which is, did you, Jill, look at the leases at all? I mean, the requirements of the leases, was that a factor in how you're looking at it? And so did you see inconsistencies in the leases, like some partners had to pay for different stuff than other partners, and you built that in here?
I saw some of the leases. My understanding is you were trying to standardize.
Yeah.
So we were going for what your goal was to
Right.
have across all of your leases. That's what I used.
Okay,
But I confess I didn't
Okay.
drill down into the tiny difference
Okay.
between Windsor's and.
They basically say all the same thing, that the library is responsible for the interior, partners responsible for the exterior.
well,
And
we have those standards, but I didn't think they were ever accepted by all the jurisdictions. But anyway, I'm gonna assume then that we're gonna assume that everybody has the same obligation as a JPA partner, okay? Can we talk about the partner initiative? Then you want to stay on this page?
I'd like to just, if we have no other changes for this page, then I guess my request would be, I realize you just did this, but please create a sample for a project we actually have so we can see what it will look like, not just the left half of the bottom, but also the right half of the bottom. But I think if we could see that along with a little description of what's the proposed scope and what's the remaining scope, I think this would be a good one-page summary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dave?
I'm torn between the need for more information and the avoidance of too much information. I like the suggested changes. I frankly think that the service modernization allowance is gonna take a big hit in most of these things, and I think we might be able to say that without really saying it, because these are all ideas. They're not needs, they're wishes. So anyway, don't know how that can be handled effectively.
I think as part of a broader discussion and I'm just gonna say, this past weekend, I happened to be in the main library in Columbus, Ohio, which is a really beautiful library. And if you wonder what could a 21st century library be like? And what would it be like on a Sunday afternoon when it's, really crowded at 5:45 and it's closing at 6? You could see that. And if we've never seen it, it's hard to imagine. So I'm hopeful that we can, through ongoing discussions, kind of bring our partners along to help them realize what together we can create. Excuse me. Barbara.
Well, that kind of goes along with what we're doing and what we're not doing. And back to this partner contribution, if that's on shaky ground or it's uncommitted on the partner's part, is there a plan B? Like, a partner, if you're not gonna put in some money, we're gonna do this instead. I mean, it gets complicated, but this is a big assumption that how do we organize ourselves going step by step when we don't have that level of cooperation.
Well, I think so. One of the things that, when I've been meeting with our partners on occasion to discuss the leases, for example. We sent them all our facilities master plan and we sent them all our ADA transition plan. But whether or not they recognize that there's a clock ticking and that they need to be including the library in their own budget, in their own planning, is difficult to assess. I mean, I can say the ones that I work with routinely understand that. But it's really more of a conversation. I feel like once we have this done, then we can go and I can go to the city managers and say, this is what we have on the books. What is your commitment to this project? And, because we find that a lot of them really are not planning at all. And that needs to change.
It's because we've never had these discussions that we're supposed to be having in a consistent way. So now it's time, and the budget workshops are coming up from all the different cities. Timing is good to make our move.
Yes.
And I think that's great, and I think this will be a very valuable tool. And to Dave's point, since the service modernization allowance is a significant part of each library's master plan capital needs, and since we're responsible for what goes on inside the library, I think it's pretty clear that we've got to not just renew the tax measure, but also continue to expand our fundraising capabilities, because got a lot of work to do and we need a lot of money to do it. Yeah.
Just one more little, it's not a little piece, but I think at some point in time, we've kind of talked about this. I think there can be a connection to what the foundation's plan is once they move beyond the Roseland and start making a bigger plan. There's this piece for the foundation to do fundraising in the individual communities to help with some of these things. So we can build on that.
Yeah. Do we have any other guidance for the team as far as how they format these pages? If you could make those changes on, for example, these two, and let us look at that, I think that would be really helpful.
I guess my question for you all is, when you look at the proposed capital project, is it clear, library committed, what that means versus partner, like when you look at this, do you say, oh, yes, we know that this 2.1 million that we put in for Healdsburg, that is actually in this year's budget. So that's why it's committed, because it's been approved. The $100,000 that we have in this pending, that's from the Friends of the Library. They have pledged that amount,
Yes.
but we don't have that money in hand. And once we would get the money in hand, we would move it out of that column into the committed column. Is that correct, Myrna? Yeah.
I think to that point, Erica, you know this in your head. Clearly, the library contribution should be something that has been approved by the commission and included in the budget. Where we have something pending, might be helpful to have a little footnote or something so that people would know that the $100,000 is from the Friends.
Yeah, what I'm noticing is that we do have a lot of information here, but it's kind of buried and it's not, I think that we'll try to make it clearer.
And the intent of this is not to limit this to 4 things, but I mean, this is a table that can extend. So if you have a contribution from the Friends for X number, we can just keep adding those rows.
Right.
Or you can have project 1 and then project 2 and then project 3 as things
Right.
go on.
Yeah.
I had my hand up,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
but everybody was looking. I think it's important to remember that a lot of the people in the town councils and a lot of the people in the staff of the towns don't know about the JPA very well, and they said they need to be educated. And I think there are a lot of people in this county who use the library all the time who don't know that we don't own the buildings. So I think there should be somewhere along, and if we're going out to proselytize, which we are, there needs to be at least a paragraph that reminds people that the towns and the county own the buildings and we provide, I think we just really need to, even though we all know it by heart, we need to make sure that when we go out and talk about it, that it's there.
So maybe I'm thinking that when we do this plan, we might need an intro with some assumptions, that put in there so that it's,
Is that part of the one pager that you and Ray have been talking about?
well, I think we need more of a, not for each project, but just in general introduction to the CIP. And maybe we use your memo with it, and then we add in assumptions, that we assume this, we assume, does that make sense?
Yeah,
You have a little space here where you could say, partner share is based on the fact that location, the partner owns the facility and they are responsible for these kinds of expenses. Library share is based on the fact that we have agreed to take responsibility for these kinds of expenses. And that could be the same on every page, but since a page might have to stand alone, it could bear repeating, and I think you're right, not everybody knows that. Dave?
Yeah, also, Jill, I hope that your final version of your memo, the 8-page memo here, or 7 pages, should be widely available and accompany the 1-pagers, because this is where all the information is. So you're gonna have several categories of audience. You're gonna people say, well, I like it generally, so I'll raise my hand. There are others that are gonna quibble about how the thing is formatted. Then you're gonna have somebody say, I really need to know where all these definitions came from, in which case they'll have your memo.
it is one piece. Not have two separate pieces.
Yeah, the memo is the lead in to these pages there
Project sheet.
in
I,
the final.
I agree.
okay,
We agree.
all right, good. Don't want this to get lost, okay?
Yeah, no, it's really important.
can we talk about something besides this form and something in the memo?
Sure.
Yes.
Back to moderating factors. Partner initiative, if a JPA partner initiates a project, SCL will need to participate. It kind of implies the tail wagging the dog a little bit. And I guess I don't have any problem with it, but I mean, if all the 2 or 3 of our partners decide, they're gonna, put up X amount of money to put a solar roof on, that implies that we have to step up for all of them. And I don't know. I mean, I just might be careful about that wording.
But maybe we need to rephrase it that it will have an impact on the library. For example, Windsor is replacing the carpeting. And so that will require us to, close and move shelving around. And so that actually we will incur costs as a result of that, even though they're replacing the carpeting. Does that make sense? So maybe we think about how to massage the language.
Change that word
Yeah.
from will need to,
Sure, I think
yeah.
for the Windsor specific example, the way Dave has been talking about it is that there's, as long as it's gonna be closed, as long as the carpet's gonna be up, there's 3 things that they'd love to do in there. So they don't have to close the library twice. So there's both of those things.
Yes.
And does that coordinate at all with our table for modernization scores? I mean, if 2 or 3 of the libraries say, we got some extra money, we're gonna fix up a whole bunch of stuff, and then we'll go, oh, we need to step in too. And then we go, well, wait a minute, you're farther down on the modernization scale. How is that gonna interplay?
Well, I think this chart is really more about needs as opposed to
A plan.
plan, yeah, so this is really, we want to maintain the objectivity of this table. That's why we have this moderating factors on the other side. So you see, you know, these projects that have the grant clock, we have to complete those projects by that time. Windsor is really, that's more like, can we fit it in based upon all of our other projects going on? I mean, that's how we have to think about it. Like, do we have capacity to do a project based upon all these other things going on?
You could choose not to do anything at the same time.
I mean, ideally, as Jill said, if we're gonna close the branch, then we might as well, you know, do some other things, because we don't want to close the library twice if we can possibly avoid it.
So subject to the capacity of the system to manage it. Well, then what is this? What does this fall down to in terms of the order of the work that the library is going to commit to? Is, you know, Northwest Library actually number 6 on our list? I mean, can we count on this? Can we go to jurisdictional partners and say, you know, we're coming along here, but it's going to be a few years because you're after so and so and so and so and so and so?
Well, we typically do these projects, you know, in a 2-year time frame. So, you know, we know that Roner Park will be done within the next 2 years. I mean, you look at Rincon Valley, it's not even in our budget at this time. But just because it's at the top of the list doesn't mean we have a budgeted project for it.
So is this table not a total refresh table? Is this a table just for,
The needs. This table outlines the needs of the buildings and what order the score dictates where it falls.
okay,
And the right half of the table outlines where there's money available to do the project. And I think that, so
I guess I'm like, what is your question?
can I offer a thought here, and then I'm not sure that modernization score and moderating factors, those seem a little vague. You know, can we call modernization score something related to, you know, to need and priority? And can we call moderating factors something related to funding availability or resource availability?
It's a communication tool, I think.
Yes,
Our,
and these terms just seem vague to me.
our community resonates with modernization.
Yeah, that's what our survey is. They like that modernization.
Well, can we say modernization needs rather than modernization score?
Yeah.
score matters.
Yeah, but we could put score. We could. We can work something out.
Yeah, we can think about this.
Okay,
You can change the header and then the table 1 can still say key to scoring.
sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But let's, I do want to pick, obviously, terms that resonate with the appropriate audience. But I also want them to be compelling, that's all.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Andy?
Dave?
Yeah, in line with picking best words, service modernization allowance. I'm looking for a softer term. Allowance is pretty soft. I think that many of these, much of the modernization allowance is gonna wind up in file 13. at every branch. I'm sorry, the modernization amounts. Service modernization allowances are gonna wind up in file 13 for most branches because we just can't afford it. It's a pie in the sky stuff, not all of it. So anyway, but then again, we should have a plan that aspires to greatness. So there.
Yeah.
Just a response, I think that if we look at those pie in the sky ideas, there are gonna be some funders out there who think that is a fabulous idea. I want that in my library. And so just as if we want to look at what we're spending the money on, we also want to think big in terms of what will turn this system into a 21st century library system. And it's gonna be dreams like that.
Thank you. Barbara?
So I need to get back to table one. So when I looked at this, you know, because we always use the term refresh. And that means a big deal. That means it implies modernization, but Healdsburg is really getting refreshed significantly and Petaluma will too. When I see Roanoke Park on here as number 4, that implies that to me, but I don't think now that that's what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the smaller stuff covered by the infrastructure grant. Is that
The maintenance
right?
timing is really the factor there. It's all of those yeah, you're right.
So these can be vastly different in terms of what we're talking about.
Right. I don't even think that, so the last major remodel, that's really the only thing that applies to the renovations, the actual new furniture, new carpeting, new. That's really the column that refers to that. The other two factors, the maintenance timing and the facility condition index, refer more to the, you know, the percentage of work that needs to be done over 10 years
And when?
and when.
Okay, so 5 libraries have a 4 score on the last major remodel.
Yeah.
And so are they then in order of the way that they will be done? Or
No.
that's just one factor?
Well, they're not in order because Rincon Valley is not even budgeted. So we know that Petaluma, Healdsburg and Annex and Roanoke Park, they all have a budget for those projects.
But Roanoke Park's budget is not a refresh. It's just the smaller scale thing that with the infrastructure grant is covered. Is that right? Or we don't know?
It's debatable. I mean, we could look at the project and add things to it, but that's what we have committed at this time. Go ahead,
So
Mary.
I think the one pager sheets will answer that question. You'll see what management is recommending in terms of a budget. What does that include? And also some information of what is not being included.
That would be
So
good.
this score right now, we couldn't tell you, we don't have the information in front of us and I couldn't speak to it, but it would. That is why this memo is part of the one pagers. The memo will be the introduction to then look at all the details which are in the one pagers.
Will that information be available for us when we are approving the budget for next year? Because we're gonna want to know which capital projects are included, right?
That would be, I would love that.
Me too.
We could work, that's, you know, I've been hoping that we could do that this document here would be ready for that. If we are ambitious enough that we, you know, after getting your feedback, how quickly we can do that. We do have to commit a significant amount of time, between now and, you know, the middle of February to crank most of it out so that we can do that.
That's a whole month.
I mean, I will say, so when we sent the resolution to commit funds for the grants, we did not have budgets for those projects other than what we put in the grant. And we did not have time to create a more fleshed out budget for those projects because we had to get that resolution and we had to get the funds committed for the deadline for the state. We know that we need a fully fleshed out budget for each of those projects that details what work we're doing, what work our partners are doing, and what the total project budget is. We know that.
What I could say is this. This is my thinking. This year, Uh, and it's feasible. Let's start off with we have an operating budget and we have a capital budget. And I have been historically, and they have historically been combined at one. It doesn't have to necessarily be that way because it's two funding sources. We have, our operating budget, which is salary and benefits, it's our services and supplies, our maintenance of our buildings. We do have maintenance in there, like, damaged carpeting or a broken window or something, we repair those. We have funds in our operating budget for that. And then separate, that is our operating revenue that is paid by our annual property tax receipts and sales tax receipts. Then we have our capital budget, and the funding source is our fund balance. So if we wanted to bifurcate that and just look at our operating budget, and then maybe a little later, but still before June 30th, we could look at our capital budget since it's funded with our fund balance. We can try to do that. I'm just thinking out loud so that we can accomplish it both this year.
And I'm gonna come back to what Dave said earlier, and I know, Erica, you and Ray are working on our messaging and communication and so on, but I think it's gonna be very important for us to communicate the pretty extensive capital needs that we have in a way that's compelling to the community. And if they're just looking at $20 million in fund balances and don't see any plan to actually use those, it's a very different situation. So I know there's a ton of work that's already got into this and that there's still a lot of work ahead. I'm feeling some urgency to kind of get to the next level with this.
Yeah, and I think we've also learned, and I have talked about when we do these renovations, that right now we budget, per year, that this year we've got 2.1. And what we would like to do is when we do a project, we have the whole budget approved for the project. And it may be separated into 2 fiscal years, but at least we know that this is what was approved for this project. And these are all the things that are going into it.
Yeah.
And that's what you're laying out here, which I think is great. And it would be super helpful to the commission to see this as
And
well.
also, and just to be a little more technical, the approved budget and committed funds, so we can reserve those funds for that. And we know that that is not available for, other priorities that we have, unfunded accrued liability or anything else. We have reserved it for these projects. And then it's more transparent and clearer, how we're fully utilizing our fund balance.
So I know we've had a lot of discussion, appreciate everybody's time. Do you feel like you have a few takeaways of that will kind of get us to the next step here? I don't want to speak for the other members of the committee, but I'm certainly willing to connect before our next formal committee meeting to look at and comment on any changes that you've made, because I think it's really important. And if you'd like the full committee to be involved in that, we can certainly look to set up an additional meeting. Dave?
Yeah, me too.
I feel like we all realize this is a big and very important task. So I want to thank you, and Jill, really appreciate you coming today in addition to all the work that went into this. And Miriam and Erica, thank you for spearheading this effort. It's really important. Okay. Any requests for items for future committee meetings? Before we get there, Mary, can you just remind us, you had given us a schedule of when we were going to be seeing different things. I'm just wondering if you can recall or pull up what we have coming up so that we can keep in mind those when we're adding additional items?
Currently, we have, for next month, February is the mid-year review, which I already mentioned. That's February. And I believe the next item is, February, March, April. For me, it's really then honing in on our budget. The budget workshop is March 27th. So right now, what I've done is distributed our budget instructions to management, and they're currently working on building their budget request. And that's due February 2nd. And so the month of February, we'll be finalizing that
I think
budget.
that's last year's calendar, yeah.
And then, so February and all of March is really focusing on the budget workshop,
And the budget workshop is scheduled for
the 27th,
27th of March.
Wednesday, the 27th.
Okay. Okay, so Barbara, what would you like to add?
Yeah, actually, I asked for it in December, and then you added something, an OPEB report that shows all of our contributions since the OPEB policy was established. And Andy, you asked for something to be included in that. I forgot what it was, but it's in our minutes.
Yeah, I normally, we have included that in a budget. And we can do that.
So we had talked about getting an update on the pension and OPEB, and we had vaguely put it in the spring. I don't think we had selected a specific date for that. Yeah.
I think I can have the OPEB payments history for the February meeting, and any other updates, I'll have to get back to you.
That help?
But this is a second thing.
Oh, second thing, okay.
In the past, when we've had a holiday, the January and February holidays, we've moved the meeting up a week. And we're moving them just a day. And I didn't know if we wanted to confirm that that was our new policy. Like today, normally I thought we would have met next Monday. In the past, that's what we've done. And like in the February, it's the same thing. It's that third week as a holiday. And we've met the fourth Monday. But if we change it, that's fine with me, but I just thought we should make it official.
That was the schedule that I got. I don't know.
There's a policy?
Yeah, I don't know if we need a policy.
Well, not a policy, it's
Practice.
the 9 years I've been on this committee, that's what we've done. And so this year it's changed. And I just think that the committee ought to know about it. I mean, I was following our prior practice. I didn't have it on my calendar today.
Oh, well, I have our next meeting scheduled for February 20th. Yeah, Lisa?
Well, I guess I'll just add that when I came on board, the idea was the third Monday of each month, the finance committee would meet. And I don't know if I did this just on my own or if I talked to somebody. If it's on a holiday, it was on a Monday, I was just moving it to a Tuesday. And I had scheduled all these out in advance through the fiscal year. But I can't recall if I ran it by anybody. I might have just,
Well, other than
Made
next
that.
month, I don't know that there's any.
Right. Well, Juneteenth, when's Juneteenth?
Oh,
That's not a problem.
Yeah, that's the same thing. So this is some additional information for consideration is certainly we can, this is your meeting, we could, schedule it, whatever is the committee's preference. It is helpful for staff. The Tuesday is not, overburdensome. It works for us for a couple of reasons. One is still the same, it's still the same week, the third week of
Yeah.
the month. Number two is that if there are any changes or updates that you would like to make before we submit the reports for the commission, it allows it, that's why I think the meetings are scheduled the third week. It allows us time to prepare those reports for our internal review, agenda review, and then posting in time for the commission meeting.
Yeah, and given the urgency that I think, I'm feeling about this topic and other financial issues, I appreciate not putting it off another week, so.
Yeah, so for our posting, agenda packets, if we do it on the fourth week, then that will not give us enough time to get it in the commission packet.
Well, it's just the notice that I didn't have any notice about it. And then February, the 20th, February and June, I'm gonna have problems because I have lab at 5 o'clock. So I'll have to leave early or we'll get out of here early.
Okay, well, with that in mind, I apologize, we've run long, but I do want to thank everybody. I think it's really important that we review this as thoroughly as possible. Well, thank you. And we're going to adjourn. It's 4:58. And next meeting will be on Tuesday, March 20th. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Erica, don't go away.
Oh.
Something we're getting started.
Okay.
The city.
Okay.
Jason, that's.
Okay.
It's, we didn't have anything.